Good morning, good day, everyone. We'll just begin in a few minutes as folks trickle in and join us. Okay, well, we're excited to welcome you to the second webinar in the Indigenous Women's Leadership Series. This is a collaboration between the Indigenous Leadership Initiative, the Isak Olam Foundation, as part of the Conservation Through Reconciliation Partnership. Today, we gather to celebrate, honor, and learn from the grandmothers of conservation. This session will be recorded. We'll be sharing it on the Conservation Through Reconciliation Partnership website and YouTube channel. And we'll share those links very soon. But before we begin, I'd like to invite Elder Linda Boudreau-Semaganis to open this gathering in a good way. I'll pass the feather to you, Linda.
I'm going to light a smudge and ask for clarity for all of us, that we'll be able to share our knowledge and our teachings in a good way with all people. Grandmothers and grandfathers, Creator, I thank you for blessing us with another day and for an opportunity to work with one another and share in a good way what it is we know about life as it is today and as it was in the years before. I give thanks that you allow us to walk in the footprints of our ancestors across the country, and that you have blessed us with the knowledge that we have gained throughout our journey. I pray for peace, and I pray that people will learn to appreciate our mother, the earth, and to learn about Wakoto and the relation of everything to everything. And for all the things I ask, Creator, I ask in your name because you are all powerful. Hi, kananaskumtan. And I'll sing a song. And what I'm singing in this song is I'm asking Grandmother Eagle to come and join us so that we can have that strength and to be able to carry a message across the country that needs to be heard out there. No kom kapita greatawa ki hil esqueo awa no kom kapita greatawa yo hey hey ayo hey 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 ayo hey 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 ayo hey hey ki esqueo awa no kom kapite goetawa ki esqueo awa no kom kapite goetawa oh hey oh hey oh hey ayo hey oh hey oh hey ayo hey oh hey oh hey ayo hey hey when you sing that song, Kihio Esqueo Awa, its grandmother, I am here and I'm asking her to come in, no kom, to come in and sit with us so she will guide us on our session. And when you sing in the chanting part and you stop, that's how when the eagle sees like something below, he will stop for one split second and look and then soar in whichever way. So it always encourages us to stop and take a look while we're traveling on our little journeys that we do every day. Hi. Language.
Language.
Thank you very much, Linda. So we're very excited to have you all here with us today. I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm Kristy Tomkinson, joining you from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and within the Dish with One Spoon Covenant in Guelph, Ontario. I am the Communications and Knowledge Mobilization Specialist with the Conservation Through Reconciliation Partnership. Very honored to be here with the Grandmothers of Conservation today. Many of you who are familiar with the CRP's virtual campfire series will notice we have a slightly different platform today. As I said, today's session will be recorded. It will also be closed captioned. The closed captioning isn't the most perfect system, but we'll try our best to fill in the gaps when it comes to spellings of names and places. We'll also try our best to share any links to resources that are mentioned as part of this session. And while we may not be able to see each other's video screens, you'll be able to interact with us in a number of ways. And if I can get my screen shared with everybody. And so there are 3 ways that we can interact with each other during this session. You'll see the chat function below. It looks like a speech bubble. That's where you'll have a choice to chat or share questions with the hosts and panelists directly. And you can feel free to test it out. I know many of you are testing out as we speak and saying hello and welcome and thank you. Perhaps you can share with us where you're joining us from today. And the Q&A function looks like 2 speech bubbles. Here you can type in questions for panelists anonymously or with your name. During the question, panelists may answer your question, or my colleague Victoria and I will pose the question to the grandmothers to answer that question for you. And then you can also ask to speak. If you raise the hand, there's a hand function there. Click on that and you'll have the opportunity for us to unmute you once we call upon you. And you can speak to the panelists with your question over voice. So that's a bit of housekeeping. We look forward to your thoughts, questions, and engagement today. And now I'll stop sharing my screen here and I'll pass the feather back to Linda to start with introductions. Back to you, Linda.
Hi, my name is Linda Boudreau-Semaganis. I live in Treaty 6 territory and the heart of the homeland of the Métis, and my community is called Saint Paul de Métis, although most people just say Saint Paul. I'm a young 70 plus, and my cultural background is Ojibwe and Cree. My adopted family was Ojibwe, but I am from the Cree people, and my culture is what brought my life together. I work with youth, and I'm an advocate for MMIWG2S, and have been for 30 years. And I'm a continuous and ongoing learner. I am always absorbing new things, and I'm always consulting with my elders and the elders that I come in contact with across the country, because that's how we learn. And it gets harder when you get older because you can't get out and do the things you used to do. But gathering and harvesting and teaching the young people the ways on how to preserve our land and our medicines and our plants and our people, the food we eat, is critically important for all of us as grandmothers to exchange that information and to go out on the land with the kids. Even if I can't get out of the car, I can go out to the land and instruct and work with them to learn new things, because that's important. That's how this world as we know it is going to survive, is the grandmothers and grandfathers going out on the land and teaching the young people. And I'm really glad to see that there's learning on the land opportunities happening now in schools and communities, and that's so critically important. So that's me. I hope I can share something of value to everyone. Hi.
I guess we can pass the feather on to Elder Marilyn Capreol.
She's muted.
My good half just came in. And I go, Nabish Quaid, she'll cause him a quado down. She wanna go down to ball. Mano do goming. My name is Water. Specifically the water that lives in the swales, the inland lakes, the wetlands. And the purpose of that is guarding the medicine beds that live there. Looking to the underneath who lives there and how important they are for our nation's survival. I am Ojibwe from Shawanaga First Nation, where my ancestral lines put their feet on the rocks and their feet in the sand and soils. They walked the bush trails when they could not travel by water. The canoes that they traveled in, they gently put the paddles to that beautiful face, Nibby water. And in their places, they had good governance of the land, how to take care of it, how to utilize it, how not to overwork it. Meaning that there were many camps along the way, as they told me. Advocate for life, yes. And I, like my sister Linda there, I'm 70 plus 2. And I came from a time where I thought when I was 4 or 5 years old, our people talking the old ways. We say that's olden days. And today we talk about the olden days because we have to. It's our responsibility as grandparents, grandmothers. We will never turn our children away. And they don't have to be your own blood children. We have that responsibility. We will not kick the dogs because that canine was very integral in the creation. So with that, I'm going to pass the feather to my young Marilyn over there. And make much for this opportunity to share. Oh, Marilyn.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Marilyn. My name is Marilyn Slett. My ancestral name is Kawazit, and that translates to treasure box. And I have another name that was bestowed onto me from my maternal grandmother, Gaguia, and that translates to beloved. I'm the elected chief counselor for the Heiltsuk Tribal Council, and I've been in this role for 14 years. And we're located on the central coast of British Columbia, and it's the gateway to the Great Bear Rainforest. I'm a grandmother, a new grandmother. I'm very proud to be a granny. I've been an auntie for a long time and a mom. My grandson is 7 months old, and it really just brings a new level of love and care and meaning to my life, and really brings and shines that light on the work that the grandmothers do. And I just really hold my hands up to the ladies on the panel here today for all of the work that they continue to do in their lives. I'm also the president of the Coastal First Nations. This is an alliance of 8 coastal communities. We make up the Central Coast, North Coast, and Haida Gwaii, and we have the largest Indigenous population here in this region. And we've been doing a lot of work collectively and also, individually as nations. And I'm really happy to share some of that here today with you later on in the presentation. Gayexika.
Sophia, we can pass the feather on to you now. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia Rabliauskas, and my Anishinaabe Wisdom is Nawakwe Kijigukwe, and Poplar River is located about 400 kilometers north of Winnipeg on the east side. So our community is about 1,500 people. And I'm a grandmother of 3 beautiful children, and they've made my life more interesting. So I think I've been very fortunate to be involved in working with elders in our community from way back, and now I'm in the point of my life where I have the responsibility of passing on many of the things that I've learned from my parents and grandparents and the elders as well. So that was very important to me, and that's why I do what I do. And life is so important, and we consider everything on the land is very sacred and needed to be treated with respect. And that's where my interest has always been. So I just wanted to start off with that, and I'm happy to be part of this gathering of grandmothers. I'm anxious to hear from them and what they have to offer, and time to listen and learn from each other. Miigwech.
Thank you, Sophia. So I think it's time now to do a round of storytelling and sharing. And I believe, Linda, the feather is being passed over to you again.
Okay. I'm a proud Métis grandmother and great grandmother. I have raised up my family, and I'm a seventh generation Métis. And when I look at the land and I look at our culture, this is the beginning of our new year. This is when our new year begins, not January 1, but when the new life is beginning to start, and the plants and are sending out their tendrils and poking their fresh green faces through the earth. The animals are bringing forth their little ones, and others are mating. The geese and ducks are back, and they're nesting and laying eggs, and will be bringing forth little ones soon. It's different across every area in the country, because some people already have their baby ducks and geese running around. For us, they haven't come yet. The eagles are just back, and they're nesting up in the hills around us, and you see them out and about, checking out the land and looking for food, and blessing us with their presence and their strength that they give us when we see them, and we place our tobacco on the earth to give thanks that they have come to bless us. For me, the way I look at life is that we talk about wakoto, and that's kinship, relationship, and everything that exists today is a part of that wakoto, and we're all related. I wouldn't survive if there was no water, and water is from where all life comes. So women have the responsibility to look after the waters and to ensure people are taking care of the water, because we would never survive without it. And our plants and the animals and the birds and the fish and everything depend on water for life. So it's up to us to keep the waters clean and sacred. And today, most of the development that we see is based on economics, not caring for the water or the land. And that's sad, because there's a natural flow of life, and it's not based on dollars. It's based on life itself. And for me, like, I'm not a scientist, and I told the girls that when they called me to see if I'd participate. But how it works for me, and if you're looking at conservation, is that I say that, and I have it on my card, that I'm a cultural conservationist, because I have earned the cultural knowledge across my years. And I believe that it's my responsibility to teach that to the young people. And that includes the respect and honoring the water, the land, the plants, the animals, the flying ones, and all the creatures that are on the earth, even down to the little ants, and especially like the bees who bring new life, who make sure that things are pollinated so that the flowers and plants and medicines will grow another year. And I had a volunteer come to mow my lawn the other day. I said, no, not till the end of May, because my dandelions are just popping now, and that's the first food for the bee. And so even if my Munyao neighbors get upset because I have a front yard full of dandelions, I say, Kiam, that's my little piece of land, and if I wanted to have a yellow lawn, I will have one for a little while. And because it's important. Last year we didn't have a lot of bees, and my little raspberry patch in the yard hardly had any berries because we had hardly any bees. And during the fall, when the bears are looking for berries and food to eat before they go into hibernation, I had a dream, and those bears were saying that there's not much food on the land, and we're going into our fast, and we don't have enough to eat, and we need you grandmothers to make offerings. So my sister and I went out to the bush with my grandson, and we put out 4 great big fish and a bowl full of berries on a red cloth on the earth, and offered it to all the bears across the country, that they would be able to find food and nourishment to make, so that they could make it through the winter. But I took my grandson, and he learned that, because his name is Grandfather Bear, and he needs to know those things. So he came along. And when I look at this new year and that new life, everything is important to everything else. And when I look at that, when the plants start to come up and they're starting to grow now, they're showing themselves to us, we have to be careful how we manage that. And my friend lives in the bush, and she has a cabin out there, and her grandchildren came out and they mowed her lawn, but they also mowed her sage patch that she had planted, so that she didn't have to go too far to gather. She lives out in the country, so she can pretty well plant wherever, but because they didn't know the medicine, they mowed it all down, and she was just in tears because she lost her medicine patch. That's the other thing that I really feel. I'm just really specific on. The young people come to us grandmothers in the winter when they need smudges, sweetgrass, sage, cedar, tobacco, the natural tobaccos for smudging and for their wellness. And I always make sure that I teach them during the summer, June, July, August, and September. That's the gathering months. That's when you go out and you gather your own personal stash of medicine that you need, like you need the smudges during the winter. Well, we're going to have winter for 5 months. So think of how much you need. And I'll take them and I'll teach them that when you go out to pick that medicine, whether it's sweetgrass, sage, cedar, or tobacco, or any of the medicines, the diamond willow fungus that we use for smudge, the rat root that we use for winter sicknesses, and all of those things, bear root, all those things, when you pick them, the first thing you do is, when you're going out, is to put your tobacco on the ground and offer it to Creator and to our mother, the earth. So giving thanks that it's there for us, and asking that it always be there for us, for our children and grandchildren, and those ones that are yet to come, to give thanks for our ancestors for showing us these ways, and that we'll be able to recognize the medicines, because many people can't anymore. And then we pick the medicine, but we don't just rip it out by the handful. I have young people that bring me bundles of sage, and they've just pulled it out by the roots, and it just makes my heart hurt, because we're taught to break it so that the roots stay in the ground and that they'll grow again. You don't pick sage until after it's seeded. And I usually shake my plants when I'm bundling them, so that the seeds will go back into the earth, and that the medicine will grow again in the future. It's the same with sweetgrass. You pick it one blade at a time. You don't just grab a handful, you pick it one blade at a time. And when you go out and pick kinnikinnick, it's about the size of your little baby fingernail. And the old ladies used to pick it one leaf at a time. Today, most people just break off the vine, and they'll dry it like that, and then they'll break the leaves off, because it's more convenient. But the old people used to pick it one leaf at a time, and they were fast, and they would be on their hands and knees and just picking it real fast and when you're young and that you don't have the patience to do that, and you're not focused to do that. I don't know how these kids today, because the only thing they know how to focus on is those video games and their Nintendo Switch and whatever. And I always laugh at them because my rule, I go to the mountains with my grands and great grandchildren. And the rule is that when we get in the car and we're in the mountains, I'm the teacher and they put all their electronic stuff, they put away and they listen. That's the rule. They each get a bottle of water and it's time to listen and learn. And we stop and we gather fresh mountain water. I teach them how to put their tobacco on the ground. When we see cedar trees, I teach them how to put their tobacco on the ground and how to pray and give thanks and honor that medicine and how to pick it and how to put it onto, like we always have a bunch of brown paper bags because we don't use plastic when we're gathering because moisture causes it to get moldy and it takes that, I don't know how you say it, but the natural scent of the medicines goes into that plastic bag. So you use brown paper bags, or I save old towels and I use them as gathering to put the medicines on, or old sheets or blankets or stuff like that, because that absorbs the moisture and then you're retaining the natural essence of the medicine. Because all those things have spirit, and we have to, when somebody hurts you, it hurts your spirit, it hurts your heart, and you feel that. Well, the spirits of those plants and medicines also have a spirit. And when we don't honor them and we don't gather them in a good way, they feel that too. And I believe it will affect the quality of the medicine. Your belief in that medicine also impacts the medicine you gather. Because if you're just gathering it because, oh, well, I'm going to impress these people over here with how good I am and how much I know, and you really don't, and you don't know what to say and how to honor those medicines, I don't think they work as well. That's just my personal thought. And that's what I was taught by people that taught me, and I'm still learning. I'm a day older than dirt, but I still get out there and I work with people who are older than me. My auntie in Saskatchewan, she's 86 years old, and her husband's 89, and they still host Sundance. And even though she can barely get around anymore, and him too, they still host it. They're teaching other people to carry on that ceremony when they leave. And that to me is just amazing, because when our old people are a lot of times just stuffed in those old folks' homes and that. And nobody comes there to listen to them or to share with them or bring them some bannock and jam. I started doing that, and I started off with 2 little squares of bannock and some jam because that old man was diabetic. And before I left, before he passed on, I was bringing like a whole Safeway bag, like a big paper shopping bag full of bannock and a jar of jam, because everybody in his unit wanted some. And how can you say, no, it's only for Frank? You know, so I'd end up taking all this food in. But that's how we honor and grow. Like, we think outside ourselves. I get lots of gifts from doing the work that I do in the communities. And so what I can't use, I re-gift to people. I re-gift a lot of things to my old auntie and uncle, so that they can use it as giveaway at their Sundance, because they're only on pensions. They don't have an income. Like most of us community workers never worked in agencies that had all those retirement plans, because that's what they asked me when I got sick. Do you have a retirement plan? I said, yeah, sit at home, drink coffee, and eat my bannock and jam and bologna sandwiches. That's my retirement plan. But you know, we still are useful, and it's sad when you're in those homes. The to me, it's like absolute joy when somebody goes and visits them, and you're asking them questions and you're sharing with them, and you bring little gifts. I bring decks of cards and things like that where they can, you know, have some time or amuse themselves, search a word books and different things like that, so that it just gives them something to pass the time, because time is long. When we look at the gathering aspect, we need to really, really be more open to teaching, because when I do the youth camps and the youth groups, we have a gathering in the mountains every year, and those kids are so thirsty to learn. You know, my cup is never, ever empty when I'm in that situation. One of the young people will be filling my cup with tea before I can even empty it. And they want to learn everything. And they love storytelling. When you tell the stories of the old people, or when you do ceremony on a full moon, or a ceremony to honor the gathering of youth and elders, so that we can share and carry on the knowledge and the teachings and the ways of our people in a healthy, positive way. And for me, I don't only speak the words, but I've chosen to live without alcohol and drugs for over 40 years. And I continuously say that the last 45 years have been my university of cultural knowledge gathering. And that's the way it is for me. And I believe that if we all work together and we teach our children, grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren the ways of the land and how things all work together, we teach them Wakoto, and not only kinship amongst people, but our kinship with everything living on Mother Earth. We're going to do the world a favor, and that we will have a continued blessed life. So with that, I think my time is up, and I will pass the feather back to Marilyn, and she can share her knowledge with us. Hi.
I may glitch Linda. Well, my name is Marilyn. I'm going to take you on a journey and a revisit for me as well. We're going to go on a journey through the eyes and stories of a 5-year-old Marilyn, and what I learned in those different times from our people. I was born and raised on the islands, 7 miles from the mainland. In fact, my birthday is just coming Saturday. I want more presents, I'm telling my family. And when you get old, you can have birthday for a month at least. But back in the time, I'm going to talk about a time before hydro, a time before telephone, a time before computer, a time before roads. Transportation was by the train and on the boats. Airplanes we didn't know about either, but we did know about all of our little friends that were in the bush, how we played with the natural stone formations, how the sticks in a board that floated in became our best friend. I want to talk about my mom and dad and my siblings, one brother living and 4 sisters. So that made us a 6-pack. We didn't know about 6-pack in that day either. But the journey was just something awesome. We didn't think about the danger of bears or snakes or any of those things because we lived with them. We didn't scare from them. We lived with them. We had stashes of crackers and some, what do you call that, lard out on the rocks, stuffed underneath. So as we journeyed over those islands in our bare feet, skipping along, we had that food there. And the interesting thing to this day, the bears didn't eat it, the raccoons didn't eat it, none of those animals touched the value of the food because I'm sure they thought our voices and singing voices was like a real rock star. We always thought we were. We didn't know what rock star was. But the time before, all of these hard put things. So in saying that, I want to acknowledge our beautiful and sacred men right now. Because without them today, letting us have ethical space traveling through their territory, we would not be putting eyes upon each other. We would not be learning creators, land and medicines and stories from one another. If I had to go way over to Edmonton and Alberta, up to the Yukon, I would have had to have left when the snows left. And I'd still be traveling there, but I would get there. Our beautiful and sacred men sit above us in that sky world, taking care of the fire bundle. They sit in the markings of Creator in the star world, taking care of those messages. They allow us to visit through that space between them and Earth Woman, a place called air, of which it is our responsibility to take care of. We do not want to disturb our beautiful men for the gifts that they give us. In that relationship, there are many messages as well. We talk about the 7 grandfathers. We talk about letting our children know what we know to the best of our ability. The 7 grandfathers sit there in the Big Dipper, and we will always know the north direction from that faraway star that sits within its bowl. And we were given the reminder of our responsibility to transfer by being accompanied by our grandbabies that we talked about this morning with each other. That's in that little dipper, so that we will never forget. And 100 years from now, we will never forget either. Our place on the island there didn't house just us and 6 children, mom and dad and 6 children. It housed grandfathers because they were fishing guides. They knew how to make winter money. Those days there was no welfare. We didn't even know what that word was. We understood the responsible harvesting, how much was needed, what family needed help. And don't ask me how those messages came without those telephones, but they did. My granny, we called our aunts grannies as well. She loved those rock bass. So she would send us. We had a string, grocery store string that was really important. They saved everything, reused everything. And she fashioned fishing hooks from pins and things. Then she went out on the island with us and showed us the moss that you gathered to make bait. So artificial bait was long before all those plastic things you buy at the store today. They're right there on the land. And even that, you have to be very careful on how much you harvest. You cannot harvest a big pile of moss and make those same kind of fish baits, because they'll dry out and it'll be a waste. You will have killed something that you didn't need. We had ways of identifying where we were on the islands and where to go look for medicines when the granny sent us. We called it 3 sides. There was a east side, there was a center side, and there was a west side, north and south. So that we learned those directions from very, very young. We didn't go to school until we were 6 at that time. Well, being the youngest, my mother was my really first kindergarten teacher. By the time I got to school, I knew about counting, I knew about shapes, and I knew about colors, because my mother was a great seamstress of making quilts. And she had the privilege of somehow having one of those sewing machines that you had to work with your feet. And while she was doing that, our grandma would be there showing us the value of cooking. Grandma used to make scone, bannock, this thick. We all said this thick. And, you know, that was sometimes our lunch. And once in a while, she'd give us a little drink of weak tea. We were satisfied with that because we had each other. We didn't have lamps all over the place where you flicked a switch. We had one lamp in the middle of the kitchen table. And I believe that when we got to the time, we all stayed home the day that we got hydro. I was 9 years old. And after that, I think about it, that we lost that value of sitting together. We started to slide away. I remember seeing the first television. I was 6 years old, but down on the mainland, closer to the rough road that came, the hydro came there first. And because we live way out on the mainland, we didn't have it at that time. So when they flicked the switch in our house, we almost fell over looking up at the ceiling at a bulb, bare bulb, come to life. We thought this was progress, but we lost that wood stove. We started to walk in a different direction. Propane, electric stoves, electric washers and dryers, toasters that your toast didn't have the same flavor. The bread that Mom made in that old wood stove compared to the new lost its way. So the transition of not respecting the land and living with it as we were supposed to has become quite a hindrance in the way forward. And how do we teach the children our children and their children, that grandbaby that's prowling around now, from my little Marilyn there. How do we teach them? How do we teach? I have this stick here. My daughter brought this in the house when we first bought the land where we live on the island now. I take it with me everywhere because she gave me a gift of understanding my responsibility. We live from the land without hurting it. In the winter time, the men harvested the ice. That was our refrigerator. That was the electric. When they sawed the trees to make new houses for people as they got married, they did that as a community, that they kept that sawdust to keep the ice until the summer months where we didn't have refrigeration. In the winter, when they harvested a meat, it wasn't ownership and stuffed in one house. It was shared to the communities. What they had ready, they waited until cold fall to do that kind of work, the men. They dropped that meat into the water, and the water so cold, it kept it in preservation as well. There are so many things that we need to pass on. You don't really know where to start. When I got to go to school, that was a lesson too, because I was learning through what we know as a two-eyed seeing, a new education. And I came home one day and I thought, after health lessons from the teacher that came teach us health, how the table was supposed to be set, what we were supposed to, how long it took us to eat. So I'd set the clock because that teacher said 20 minutes is how long it should take you to eat your supper. Well, I'm telling you, it got that alarm clock out once. And Dad said, what do you do? You know, why are you bringing the clock here? And I told him all about what I learned at school that day. Well, boy, did I get the dickens. So anyway, a few weeks later, they started talking about, where's your house? What's your house? What's in your house? Well, we had a shed. And I was really upset because I thought we were, you know, on the poor hill. So that shed had openings between the boards. But what they didn't tell me was just that that was kind of like a fridge too, to keep some of the vegetables and things like that covered up in there, to keep the wood dry, to let the ducks that Dad harvested and hang up in there, so that, you know, there was a whole reason for us, in my mind, to be poor people. But, you know, it took growing up from that 5-year-old and transitioning into a young woman, being shy, raising a family, being a grandma, being a great-grandmother, and the privilege of sitting amongst grandmothers has brought me to that 70 plus. So I know the value of the water. I know about fishing. I can feed my family. I know about the gift of harvesting for the people, but I also know about what the animals need from us to take care of them. That is protecting the medicines that they need, to make sure that their medicine beds aren't poisoned by roadside that gets into the swamps. The bears over here need the tamarack tree in order to close up their stomachs when they go for that winter fast with grandmother. You talk about the sacred blueberries. That is bear medicine. And when the bears come out of their visiting with grandmother for the winter, they need that blueberry root to open up and cleanse the insides. We know that the muskrat needs certain things. And we need to protect those swales as well. I could go on and on and on and on. And we'd be sitting for, when I got over to the east there where the other ladies come from, or west, I'm sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. No wonder it's taken so long. We could, if we were sitting in circle, walking and canoeing and doing the old stuff, I'd be there for the winter. Then they'd send me back. But today we have this communication and thanking our beautiful and sacred men for that gift that they are allowing us to visit one another. So with that, I'm going to pass the feather to young Marilyn.
Thank you. I have a video that I wanted to share before going into the presentation. There, I see it. All right.
I think the Great Bear Land Orders is probably a historical piece of work between First Nations, industry, government, and the environmental community that has been involved. For us, it's not been 10 years, it's been our whole lives that we continue to live this way of life.
You know, we're the stewards. We're the stewards of everything in our territory.
For us, we have always claimed our rights and title. For us, it never needed a title before. It was just who we are, where we live, and where we're from, and what we own.
We've always lived here. We've always lived on the land and had a relationship to place that outlined our responsibility to care for our territory. The conflict arose when colonial governments came in and decided that they had jurisdiction.
A lot of that conflict that we were dealing with, 10, 15 years ago, took the form of, logging practices, land use decision-making decisions, tenures, those included tenures in our traditional territories. So things like that we weren't being consulted on. And if we were given very short time frames to respond to a referral, if even that.
Not only do First Nations have the best available information about what is happening here in terms of traditional use studies and anecdotal information from our people going back thousands of years, we also actually have the best available Western science practiced out on the territory. So we've got both sides of the coin. No one knows better than us what's happening out in our lands and waters, and frankly, no one knows better than us how we should deal with that.
About 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, the Coastal First Nations from the Central Coast up to Haida formed an alliance called the Coastal First Nations. And from there, our common work that we started was land use planning and creating that alliance of working together so we can move from the conflict and dispute around land use decision making to more of a collaborative approach. So the Great Bear Land Use Order, it's a great thing, it's a good thing, it's a step in the right direction. Certainly the work isn't completed, but we're pleased with the agreement, and we're pleased with the collaboration.
It's been a long time coming to get to this point of reconciliation. My hope is that this initiative is going to really set the table for equitable dialogue and even playing field moving forward, where we can create a win-win, both sides.
For us, it signifies, some human well-being milestones that we've been working with the government on around economic opportunities in the forest industry, some contributions towards some of our initiatives like our big house, and certainly some conservancies in the territory. We had a special announcement in the community school gymnasium, and we signed off on some of the forestry term sheets that we talked about in the Great Bear Land Use Order. It was nice to be able to affirm that decision and that Great Bear Order here in the Heiltsuk territory. We're the gateway of the Great Bear.
This is our country, this is our homeland, and this is our paradise, and we want to keep it that way for our children.
I really wanted to share that video just so people can see our some of our leadership from our Heiltsuk community, but also our land and water, and what motivates us, to do the work that we do. That agreement that our land, Great Bear Land Designation Order, was signed in 2016 and affirmed, in legislation, BC legislation in 2016. And it was a culmination of many years of work of leaders before us and our ancestors that have, worked so hard to protect what we have. I really want to acknowledge and hold up the stories of those told before me. We have, a lot we have so much commonalities between our Indigenous nations, and, the value of, take a little, leave a lot is something that we also, carry as Heiltsuk people. And we don't really distinguish between land and sea. We're a mariners community here, and we have different villages throughout our territory that signify the time of year in our harvest cycle. Right now, we would have just been completing our harvest new year with our swan on kelp fishery. That's a herring spawn fishery, and moving into seaweed picking. And that's, where we are here today. And you'll see a lot of people, when the weather is nicer, putting their, we call it black gold, onto racks in their front yards and drying it naturally in the elements. We have a collective responsibility to restore land and water and resource management approaches that support our community. We've been here since millennia and have survived off the territory, since time immemorial. But certainly with colonization and different resource management licenses that have been issued to the province or privately to commercial license holders. We see the resources around us diminishing. So we have this collective responsibility to plan for the future and protect for the future. We also work with British Columbia and Canada. We're doing land use planning and marine use planning, and we know our territory more than anybody else will. We have a Department of Fisheries that's right across the channel from us, but collectively with the communities that we work with here on the central, north, and Haida Gwaii coast, we have more guardian watchmen out on the water than DFO combined. And that's the commitment that our communities have, to protecting what we have. And they do monitoring and field work out in our territories, and they share information amongst each other. We also, understand that our well-being is connected to the well-being of the land and waters. And when we talk about conservation or eco-based system management, these are new words and new terms used for something that we've always done. This is just, and you heard it here today, with the first two stories about, it's a part of our lifeblood, and it gets passed down from generation to generation. Our stories, our respect, our they're a part of our connection from our people to the land. The agreements that we go into with governments respect our local knowledge, because we're the ones that know what's going on here. I think that some of the greatest lessons that we've learned through this particular process was using a wide variety of expertise and talents found within our communities. And, it's not relying on other people to come in and say, and analyze what's important to us. We know what's important to us, and we know what we need to protect, and being able to work collectively with the other stewardship offices, through the communities and leaders has been, our success in being able to protect what we have here with that land use order. It also built relationships, through the land use planning process, which moved us into marine use planning. And, our communities, and you heard it here today, we have sophisticated ways of knowing what's going on in our territories. And, our elders carry that knowledge, and they'll know, when it's, time to harvest, and, they'll know the changes in the harvest cycle. And, these are all the things that we, really draw upon in the work that we do. And, definitely as a grandmother, helping to, carry that, knowledge on to the next generation is really important. So much to share, with everybody, but, I know that we've got a really wonderful panel here today, and want to keep some time for some of those questions. Just from, in closing, from a Heiltsuk perspective here on the West Coast, in the Central Coast of BC, everything that we do is based on our Heiltsuk title and rights, and it's based on our collective history. It's based on our values and our laws, our traditional laws. We call them Gwaii laws. And that means Kakala Gwaii laws means to uphold the laws of our ancestors. And, it also carries that responsibility of protecting, and safeguarding what we have here for future generations. And I just want to thank you for your time here today. And I'm really honored to be here in this virtual circle and table with, such wisdom and, strong matriarchy. Thank you. And we'll pass the feather to Sophia.
Thank you. So again, I'm thankful for this opportunity to share with you my stories. And I said in the beginning I was anxious to hear from the others, but I wanted to say I'm excited. So I got a bit mixed up there. But I always say English is not my first language. I'm Anishinaabe. I'm on Treaty 5 territory. And so growing up, I've heard stories of some of the things that we already heard from the elders. We've always done, and as you listen to the stories of the Indigenous elders, they've always acknowledged and practiced the wisdoms and teachings of our elders and our grandmothers and our grandfathers. So I often say the message that I carry comes from my father and grandfather and many others, who were part of my life growing up, and to understand about life around us, and we understood the importance of protecting our environment, and we've heard already about how we give thanks for anything that was taken from the land because it was a gift from the Creator, and they really strongly believe that that life comes from there. So they often use that as a reminder, and like Marilyn said that we had our own way of expressing these conservation and all the things that we're hearing today. It's in our practice, in our way of life, and this is sometimes we have to use the language to express our own way of our understanding. The Creator really is a big part of our way of life. First and foremost, before we do anything or when we conduct any business, we acknowledge the Creator. So that was the first thing that I was taught, that we have to be very careful. We have to be gentle when we walk this life with our surroundings, because we cannot continue to hurt the environment, as we call our Mother Earth. Therefore, we will suffer as people, as human beings. And I think it's very critical at this point in time to really see what's happening around us. I think we are at the point where our elders were saying, we are going to suffer. And I think Indigenous people have been very forefront in trying to bring that message to the governments and to whoever is in charge of making policies and trying to take too much and really doing a lot of damage to our planet. So when as Indigenous people, when we see that happen, we suffer, and because it destroys our medicinal plants. We heard about the medicinal plants that the elders are still using and really relying on. And when you see some of that being taken and being destroyed, it really does affect your connection to that land. And you sometimes, we hear people who feel a sense of grieving when they see our Mother Earth being just being hurt. I often say, that with our children, how we need to connect them back to that understanding about how the Indigenous people are connected to the land. And when I talk about land, I'm referring to the everything that's on the land, the medicinal plants, the animals, the every little the every living things in the water, and also everything that's under the water. So that's what their understanding is, when they talk about the land. So the elders, their experience and knowledge of their surroundings has been their means of survival. And that's what I often tell our young children. We need that. We need to listen to those teachings. We really need to understand in depth what they mean when they talk about connecting to the land and respecting what's on that land, respecting one another. And I think, they've really understood the importance of conservation, again, preservation, by practicing those natural laws that were in place to guide us and give us direction, how we need to live our life on this land. And like every Indigenous group, we as a community too were affected by the assimilation and colonization that has happened across our nations here. And our language and culture and identity have been impacted, and it's still today, because even in our teachings, when I was growing up, it was all in the language, and that's how I perceive the world. That's how I look at things from that perspective, my language first, and how I connect to that understanding of what's being taught. And because of what happened, we have to find ways to try and bring that language back to our young people. So so everything growing up was done in oral. We listened to the stories, we observed and learned from our elders what they were doing, and to understand, the importance of those things that they were doing. And as time went on, we live in this boreal forest, and everything that we needed was around us. We didn't have to go far. We didn't have to go to the stores or to the pharmacies to get our medicine. It was all provided for us in our area. So they had the knowledge and the skills to have access to those things. They knew from the young age which medicines are for what, and which medicines are safe. So they had that knowledge, and when we came in contact with the non-Indigenous communities, and we lost that. We lost a lot of that, and that's something that we are trying to bring back. And I see a lot of positive things happening around that. Many of our people are slowly learning and about the importance of that. But so everything was done at that level, like orally, and I'll mention that, the importance of that. When we, I guess back in the 80s, we took it for granted, I guess, growing up, that our lands were always going to be there, protected and non-developed. But things started to happen in the 1980s. People were looking north for logging. People were looking north for mining. People were looking north to develop the land. And that's when the community says, well, I don't think, this is our traditional territories. This is where our families go and trap and hunted. This was where we went for our medicines. This is where we went for our food, for survival. So they didn't want anything to be disturbed. because they understood that once you disturb the land, once you disturb the ecosystem, once you disturb the plants, it will be hard to restore a lot of those things. So, we started to document, and that's something that we haven't done, because growing up, I didn't see anything that was documented, but they had their way. Like I was reminded that, they had ways of communication, they had ways of writing stories to each other when they're on the land. And it could be, something that was left behind and from our ancestors. And that's one of the important things I learned from my father when he would go out in the land and trap, and he would come back and say in our language. And that was really made an impact on me as I was working on these projects. And he says, Kia pinametu wakintinawe maganak. And he says, they're still there. There's a presence of my ancestors on that land, and we need to protect that. And that was so important. And I kept that with me, and I carried that with me. And the work that needed to be done was more important than ever, because the documentation was coming. We had to do our land use plans. We had to prove to the governments and that we existed here for thousands of years. And we did an occupational study, and we had to prove that we were here for that long to be able to go on to do these things. But we did the land use plan, and it was already in place in our stories. The land use planning was done, all this time as for thousands of years. But, things have changed, and we know that the importance of that. But they use their intimate knowledge, in all forms of life to do their I guess, part of their land use planning. And they really practiced and lived, true sustainability. So our communities had that vast knowledge of this land that was gifted to us by the Creator. But anyways, I like time is always an issue. But I think what led to from our land use planning, because somebody was said that this land was not being used because it hasn't been developed, but their people used it in true sustainability. That they didn't leave any tracks or destruction behind them when they were trapping and hunting, and that's been going on for thousands of years. And they didn't leave much of anything behind. So we took that very seriously, and so we moved from doing our land use planning to doing a First Nations accord with other communities around us, and we developed a team, working relationship with those communities. And then in the end, we came out with the putting a submission of a World UNESCO site, but both with cultural and nature. So because our people believed that we are the land, we are part of the land, and we cannot survive one without the other. So they said we have to do both. We cannot only do nature, we have to do it with our culture, because our cultural ways are important. Our way of life needs to be told in our submissions, and the story of the people that are still there and using that land. And I wanted to keep it the way it is, not development. There's no development. To keep that boreal forest as it is, because those trees and those plants and everything around it are doing their responsibility to protect the planet. So that's how global they were, of understanding about things like climate change and what was coming. And he says, we have to keep this boreal forest intact in order to help what's going to be happening in our future. And we're doing this for the future of our community, for the future of the whole world. So and I think at that time, as I was working with them, and how amazed I was by their understanding. I mean, we live in an isolated community, like you have to fly in to get into our community, but they had a sense of what was happening around them, and they weren't, and they were preparing, and they were very, they were very adamant about, getting this done, and they were a big part of that. And unfortunately, some of them are gone because we worked on this project for the last 20 years, and we still have, there's still no development in our area. It's still intact, and we still continue to protect it and preserve it for the health of the communities and for the health of the planet. Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you all for sharing all of your stories and your knowledge. It's been wonderful listening to you all. I'm going to share a question, and I believe this question is for Marilyn Slett. And the question is, how can we help support or engage from downtown Vancouver? And there's other, similar questions around how people can support from an urban area, or someone says an urban jungle.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the question. Well, we have, a lot of, community engagement that happens and education around, because although we signed this land use order and this order went through in 2016, the work really involves and sits on the responsibility of the communities to do the work, right? Because it doesn't, end there, right? It continues. So just recognizing that and sharing in the in the communication of why it's so important to protect, areas like, in this case, the Great Bear Rainforest. But, there's boreal, there's others, really, areas within our territories that are, under duress, as we speak today. The guardians that I talked about, that go out and monitor. My brother was a guardian watchman 15 years ago, and he did that for probably about 10 years, commercial fisherman before that. And he said that in that time span, walking the rivers and the estuaries and the streams, they would do the counts every year on fish returning, and it went from tens of thousands to hundreds by time he retired from that work. So I guess to be an ally with us on the protection, knowing that these orders that are put into place are good pieces of legislation, but the work still continues to help restore what is left here and helping to spread that word.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'd like to open the question up to the rest of the grandmothers in terms of how can people help support or perhaps shift their mindset in terms of what you're sharing with us today when we're in these urban jungles or these urban areas. Maybe I'll pass the feather to you, Marilyn Capreol.
I am thinking about the many organizations that I participate with across Canada. That is a privilege. We are always having, as Anishinaabe people, having to bend the feather in the trees for the wind to blow through the non-Indigenous thinking. The trees are so beautiful, and the winds, the big winds, are grateful to be able to sing through them. It is time for us to let those trees sing a different way. If we don't, we are going to miss a great opportunity. It is very difficult to listen to my sisters on this celebration today of minds, talking about having to put a paper, a writing about the gifts that they are understanding, for it to be credible. To ask, how can we do this? Policy about land use. There are so many markings on the earth of the first people. For instance, we are being recorded today. This is nothing new. Our ancestors across this land is from the forever. When the people had great gatherings, or great happenings, or great markings of finding things located along the lands and the shorelands, they left us writings and recordings. We just don't know how to read them anymore. They're the pictographs. And more ancient than those are the petroglyphs. And how that knowledge, that technical knowledge, to make the paintings last for thousands and thousands of years, to make markings on the rocks and the petroglyphs, must have been something. And I respect the knowledge of that passing down today, because we're still talking about it. So land usage, you study your lands really well. Look for those sacred sites, feast them, sing to them, and let those children know. I hear children on the background here. So whoever has the children, I'm very grateful to hear that voice. Reminder for us as grannies to speak up, share. Even though they might be small, they still hear us. So miigwech for the question.
Miigwech, Marilyn. May I pass the feather on to Linda? Do you have anything to add in terms of answering this question of how we can support from these urban jungles that we live in?
Well, it's always really difficult because I do a lot of work in the schools in the city and the surrounding area around my own community. And, even to take into a classroom a smudge to begin your presentation, a lot of the schools get upset. I have asked them to let me sit outside with the children so that we can smudge and that we can sit on Mother Earth, because Mother Earth will help them absorb the knowledge that is going to be shared and for them to be able to take it in. We have to go beyond, like every one of us, no matter what nation, if we're pink, blue, striped, or purple, we need to acknowledge and validate that what tradition or what way I do things is important to me. And you've asked me to come share, so I need to do it my way. And even with the offering, the protocol of tobacco, they say, well, we don't promote smoking. Well, I don't smoke. I haven't smoked for over 25 years. I decided to quit when my boys were teenagers because I couldn't tell them not to smoke if I had one sticking out of my face. So, like, tobacco is the key to the knowledge, to the encyclopedia, to your own personal university that you have within you that you've gained over your life journey. So when you gift that tobacco, that's the key to accessing that knowledge. And then for those of us who work in ceremony, and all of life is a ceremony, but for those of us that work in ceremony, when I am gifted tobacco, that will go with me, and some of it or all of it will go with me into, say, a pipe ceremony or another ceremony, a sweat lodge, a night lodge, a full moon ceremony. And that the prayers and the knowledge that I've shared with you, I ask that it be continued. So it's not just you handing me the tobacco, but it's an ongoing process that'll carry on for whatever time. And we really need to look at that, because when people want knowledge, but they want it on their own terms, according to how they think, not how you think as an elder or a knowledge keeper. So we need to, I always say, quietly teach them. But I'm the last thing that anybody ever knows as quiet. My name is a thunderbird, and I'll know that thunderbirds are very loud, and they'll get your attention one way or the other. And that's my life. And but I teach, and I always look for opportunities. One of the schools I've mentored with for the last 12 years just had their first feast right at, for the whole school population. And their home ec or whatever, those classes where they teach sewing, all the girls had ribbon skirts. Isn't that amazing? To me, it just makes my whole heart swell with pride and with gratitude that our teachings, our ways are coming back, and they're going to be maintained. When you can gift your chapan, your great-granddaughter, a little wee ribbon skirt, and she puts it on, and she won't let her mother take it off when she has to go to bed. She has to sleep with it too, because her kokum gave it to her. And she's going to wear it to bed and wear it wherever till it's got to be pried off her to wash it. And, I look at that. When we approach, I would like to see the schools in the cities and towns be open to taking the kids out to places where they can gather and sit on the land and be shown what sweetgrass and sage and cedar and the different plants that grow that. They always talk about dandelion being the weed. That's one of the most important plants we have. Everything on that plant can be used for medicine, food. It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful splash of color that you see in the spring. And every part of that dandelion can be used. And people just can't wait to get out there with their lawnmowers and chop them all down. But to me, I leave them. I have a young fella that comes across and mows my lawn. He came over on the weekend. I said, no, well, wait another week or two, because the dandelions are just coming up, And I live right in town. I live right across from the government building. But it's my little chunk of the earth that I pay taxes on. So I'm going to grow dandelions if I want to. I said, let them try and attack me. I'll hit them with my cane. But really, to take kids out on the land, it changed their whole perception of how they fit in the universe. I used to work in a treatment center. We had kids right off the street, gangsters and people that didn't live a good life. And we took them out to the bush for a camp. And the guys that used to walk around strutting their stuff and wearing their colors, all those things were put in their lockers, and they went out on the land in t-shirts and sweats like everybody else. And their whole persona changed. And the biggest, toughest gangster guy said because we, of course, us grandmothers are witchy, and we told them, ghost stories and scary stories of spirits of the night. And this big, tough guy came and he said, "I'll sleep across the door of the grandmother's teepee and protect you." He was scared to sleep alone. He thought if he hung out with the grannies that he'd be protected. And we said no. And but you know, you look at how the land changes your whole spirit, because we're so connected to the land in every way. So for that, I think that we need to open on the land educational opportunities to all children, regardless of where they live. Even our own kids on the res, you know, they don't get out of school a lot of times to do on the land opportunities either. And we need to value that, and we need to put that into practice. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Linda. I'll pass the feather on to you, Sophia. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, when I travel to the city, I see many of our people on the street. And I remember driving one day with my son, and we saw these people out on the streets, you know, and they were laughing, and some were just walking by, and he says, you know, Mom, he says, do you ever wonder what their story is, where they come from, you know, their family? Do they have family? So, and I got to think, you know, and I said, yeah, they do, you know, that's somebody's son. That could be your uncle, you know. So I just kind of got emotional when we were talking about that, because I know personally, you know, we have a member of my family who is out there, and the opportunity for them to really get back to where they come from, to really have given an opportunity to go to a place where they can learn about who they are, the history of our people and our communities, and why they're there. There is a reason why they're there, you know, because of what happened. You know, there's a history of residential school. You know, many of our people were displaced because they were pushed out of their communities for land. So I think now, you know, to make part of the reconciliation, you know, is to come up with a strategy how we can help these young people come, you know, to learn about the roots, where they come from, and the gift of life. And you really need to get our leadership to work into helping our people get back on track, because we have a beautiful way of life. We are very loving people. And if we understand the 7 teachings and use that as a guide in helping and guiding these young people, because, you know, we have many generations of healing to do. And I would like to see more of that happen, you know, to as part of reconciliation. These people didn't really have a choice, a lot of them, because a lot of their parents came out of residential school where they didn't know that big chunk of their history, where they came from, and how our people were once. You know, our people were very loving, forgiving, and we were very close as families and communities. And I think that's what we need to really give back to those, to develop programs. You know, I would be, if they are calling for grandmothers to be part of this, you know, to listen to their stories. That's what I would I would be there. So I think that's how I would, but I think really need to put some action into these there, because there's too many. We're losing too many of our young people on the streets, too many, and I think that should be very looked at urgently. And I think, you know, to be for these young people and our people to be healthy again. So it is very touching thing to really sit down and talk about, unless we start healing. And we need land to give us the wisdom and to give us the knowledge and how we can care for those family and for those people. I know I'm long-winded, but yeah, I think that's where I am with that, Miigwech.
Thank you, and Miigwech, Sophia.
Mhm.
While I could listen to you all day, and I know many of our guests here today could as well, it's getting close to time. So we'll be closing. I'll be passing the feather on to you, Linda, to close us in a good way. And then I believe Elder Marilyn Capreol would like to sing us a song. So on to you, Linda, and thank you.
It's been a really heartwarming listening to all the stories and the knowledge that's shared, and how much we're so alike, even though we've never met in real time. We've just met over these Zooming. And, you know, there's hope for our children and grandchildren of us grannies. Speak up loud and proud and teach the value of them learning their history and the gifts that were given to us from the ancestors and from Creator. And we need to honor that. So I'm going to close with a prayer. Grandmothers and grandfathers, Creator, I'm so grateful that we have this time to share. I ask that this knowledge and sharing be passed on down to those that are coming behind us, and to those around us, and to those that live in the cities and towns and communities. Creator, I ask for your direction and guidance in reconnecting with the land and our culture and traditions and our languages. For all the things, Creator, that you have given us, I ask that you help us to retain and spread the good word about how our whole life is about Wakotuan and honoring all things on Mother Earth, and that we need to celebrate each other. And I always say, my favorite saying is smudge, not judge. When we look at people who don't have the life that we do, we don't know their story, Creator, and I ask that you give us that empathy to understand and include them in whatever life we're living. For all the things I ask, Creator, I ask in your name because you are all powerful. I ask for continued blessings, and that what people take away from this gathering, that they can use in a good way with all people. Hi, kinanaskomtan.
Elder Marilyn Capreol, I believe you're muted, but we're so excited to listen. Oh, I still can't hear you.
Okay, I did the red button twice. I want to say miigwech for everybody today, for everything for the babies that we heard and the ones that are coming. We talked very much about our grandparents and the ancestors, but we talked much about the life giver, Squigmaquai, Earth Woman. She is a very strong woman, and we take our example from her, trying to keep up in the best way. So the song that I'm offering honors her. It's called the Strong Woman Song. Oh, Sophia, your baby, beautiful. So honoring our Mother Earth, the life givers, and our beautiful sacred men. The prayers from our bookmiss, Linda, and the voice from our young Marilyn. Just an awesome day. And Kristy and Victoria, miigwech for inviting us into the circle. So with that, everyone, just have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Miigwech.
And thank you all for joining us. We're so honored to have you, grandmothers. We're grateful to be in the circle with you today. Thank you very much.